day 93 of Journey Through the Bible, and we are in the book of Nehemiah. Note there is an outline of Nehemiah below this video. With the book of Nehemiah, we close the history of the biblical period. Nehemiah is very closely linked to the book of Ezra. It has always been attached to it in the Jewish manuscripts. It gives the history and reforms of Nehemiah from about 444 to 420 BC. Nehemiah's great work of restoring the walls of Jerusalem depended on securing the permission from the Persian king. Nehemiah held the important position of cupbearer to Artaxerxes I. As you read the first 11 verses of his book, Nehemiah shows us how to pray through a problem. It is a great place to learn how to pray and to use this prayer as a model when we're facing impossible problems. The kind of problems faced by Nehemiah. Well, of course, the first place we go to is the throne of God, and Nehemiah shows us how to do that. There and only there can we find solutions we need. Adversaries, even from the realm of Satan and his fallen angels, may seek to stop our prayers from being answered. But prevailing prayer always brings the answer from heaven we need. Through the decree of this powerful Babylonian ruler, Nehemiah was appointed governor of Judea. That gave him the power to rebuild the area. Earlier, Ezra had returned to Jerusalem, but had been hindered in his work by adverse royal decrees secured by his enemies. In God's providence, Nehemiah secured the restoration of royal favor. The actual building of the wall was parceled out among different leaders. Although Nehemiah encountered opposition from Sanballat, the wall was successfully completed. Nehemiah's reform involved the teaching of Moses' law by Ezra and others at a special Feast of Tabernacles. This led to a great prayer of confession that we find in Nehemiah chapter 9. You will find some of the parts of this chapter to be particularly meaningful to you as you personally worship and praise the Lord. For example, in Nehemiah chapter 9, in verse 5, we read these words, "Stand up and bless the Lord your God from everlasting to everlasting. Blessed be your glorious name, which is exalted above all blessing and praise. You are the Lord, you alone. You have made heaven, the heaven of heavens, with all their host, the earth and all that is on it, the seas and all that is in them. And you preserve all of them, and the host of heaven worships you." Spend some time in this very valuable chapter. I suspect you'll find yourself underlining verse after verse to remind you of its power and meaning, and you'll want to return to this chapter many times in your life. Another part of Nehemiah 9 that I think you'll enjoy is one we'll finish with today. I begin in Nehemiah 9, verse 26. "Nevertheless, they were disobedient and rebelled against you and cast your law behind their back and killed your prophets, who had warned them in order to turn them back to you, and they committed great blasphemies. Therefore you gave them into the hand of their enemies, who made them suffer. And in the time of their suffering they cried out to you, and you heard them from heaven. And according to your great mercies you gave them saviors, who saved them from the hand of their enemies. But after they had rest, they did evil again before you, and you abandoned them to the hand of their enemies, so that they had dominion over them. Yet when they turned and cried to you, you heard from heaven, and many times you delivered them according to your mercies."